What if I told you that the thing you want most is also the thing you're most afraid of? Not death, not failure, peace. You've felt it before. That rare afternoon when everything finally goes quiet. The tasks are done. The notifications fade. The world stops demanding pieces of you. And in that silence, something strange happens. Instead of relief, you feel restless. Instead of calm, you feel exposed. Your hand reaches for your phone. Your mind reaches for a problem to solve. Anything to fill the space where peace was trying to enter. We say we want peace. We dream of it. We scroll through images of monasteries and mountain retreats, imagining ourselves finally free from the noise. But when peace arrives at our door, uninvited and unannounced, we bolt the lock. We pretend we're not home, because peace is not what we thought it would be. Peace is not excitement wearing comfortable clothes. It's not productivity in slow motion. Peace is the complete absence of the machinery we've been running our entire lives. And that machinery has become who we think we are. The mind is a storyteller. It has spent decades building narratives about who you are, what you need, and what threatens you. These stories require constant maintenance. They need problems to solve, enemies to defeat, futures to worry about, pasts to regret. The mind feeds on movement, on drama, on the perpetual chase. Peace offers none of this. Peace is the end of the story. And the storyteller fears its own unemployment. The ancient Sufis knew this. They spoke of the nafs, the ego self, as a wild horse that fears the open field more than the stable. The horse has lived in confinement for so long that freedom feels like falling. The boundaries were painful, yes, but they were familiar. They provided shape. Without them, who is the horse? Where does it go? Your mind is that horse, and peace is the open field. When you sit in silence, truly still, the mind panics. It throws thought after thought at you. Remember that embarrassing thing you said 7 years ago? Here, think about that. Worried about money. Let's catastrophize your entire financial future. Feeling calm. Here's a random anxiety with no clear source. This is not malfunction. This is design. The mind is doing what it was built to do, protect you, by staying alert, by scanning for danger, by never fully letting go. In the wilderness of our ancestors, the one who relaxed completely became lunch. The mind learned to never stop. But we are no longer in that wilderness. The threats we face now are mostly abstract, mostly imagined, mostly constructed by the very mind that claims to protect us from them. We are trapped in an evolutionary inheritance that no longer serves us. Peace terrifies the mind because peace reveals the mind's irrelevance. In true peace, you discover something shocking. You exist without thinking. You are aware without narrating. You are present without defending. The mind, in that moment, is seen for what it is, a tool, not a master. A servant that has been posing as a king. And kings do not abdicate willingly. The Buddhist monks have a practice called just sitting. Zazen. No mantra, no visualization, no goal. Just sitting. Just being. Beginners report that this is the hardest thing they've ever done. Harder than marathon running. Harder than fasting. Because in that sitting, the mind reveals its true nature. It is a machine that creates problems to solve. And when you stop feeding it problems, it begins to manufacture them out of thin air. You are not afraid of peace. You are afraid of meeting yourself without the costume of your thoughts. You are afraid of the vast, Silent awareness that exists beneath the noise. Because that awareness doesn't need the story. It doesn't need the drama. It doesn't need you to be anything other than what you already are. And if you don't need to become anything, then what have you been running toward your entire life? This is the great fear. Not that peace will be boring, but that peace will reveal the chase itself was unnecessary, that you were already whole, that the lack you've been trying to fill was an illusion created by the very mind that promised to fix it. The market economy of modern life depends on your lack. Entire industries are built on the premise that you are incomplete, that you need this product, this experience, this achievement to finally be enough. And your mind, loyal servant to the system, agrees. It whispers, not yet, not until, not enough. Peace says otherwise. Peace says you are already the destination. And that message is heresy to everything you've been taught. There's a reason spiritual awakening is often described as death. The Sufis call it fana annihilation. Not the death of the body, but the death of the false self. The death of the one who was always becoming, never being. The death of the one who needed problems to feel purposeful. When that one dies, what remains? Everything and nothing. The paradox that the mind cannot hold. So here's what you can do today. When peace arrives, when you finish your work early, when the house goes quiet, when you have nothing urgent demanding your attention, notice what happens. Notice how the mind reaches for distraction. Notice the discomfort in your chest, the urge to fill the space. And then, just for 60 seconds, don't reach for the phone. Don't create a task. Don't fill the silence. Sit with the discomfort. Breathe with it. Let it be there without fixing it. You're not trying to achieve peace. You're befriending the fear of it. Because on the other side of that fear is a question that will change everything. What if peace isn't something you find? What if it's what you are when you stop searching? The mind will never stop being afraid of peace. That's not its failure. That's its function. But you are not the mind. You are the one who notices the fear. And in that noticing, you are already free. We call it staying busy. We call it ambition. We call it being responsible. But what if it's actually an addiction? What if we're not running toward success, we're running from silence? Look at your day. From the moment you wake, you're in motion. The alarm cuts through sleep. You reach for your phone before your eyes fully open. The notifications flood in, the emails, the messages, the news. The world pouring itself into you before you've even remembered who you are. And it continues. Podcast on the commute, music in the elevator, scrolling during lunch, television while you eat, social media before bed, every gap filled, every silence murdered. We've become terrified of empty space, not just in our schedules, but in our consciousness. We've forgotten that silence is not emptiness. We've confused noise with life. But underneath all that motion, underneath all that sound, there's a question we're avoiding. And the louder we make our lives, the easier it is to never hear it. The question is simple. The question is unbearable. Who are you when you're not doing anything? The ancient Greeks had a word, acedia. It's often translated as sloth, but that's a mistranslation. Acedia is the restlessness of the soul, the inability to be present with yourself. The monks of the desert knew it well. They called it the noonday demon, the urge to flee your own company, to abandon your practice, to do anything other than sit with what is. We have industrialized acedia. We've turned it into a virtue. We celebrate the busy. We reward the exhausted. We've built an entire civilization on the premise that stillness is suspicious. But business is not depth. Motion is not meaning. And the fear underneath all that activity is the same. Fear the desert monks. Face the fear that if you stop moving, you'll discover there's nothing there. Except there is something there. That's what terrifies us. In the noise, you can be many things. You can be your achievements, your failures, your opinions, your plans. You can be the protagonist in a dozen different stories simultaneously. You can be the person your parents expected, the person your partner needs, the person your culture demands. But in the silence, all those masks fall away. In the silence, you're confronted with what remains. And what remains is so simple, so ordinary, so utterly devoid of drama that the ego recoils. What remains is awareness, breath, presence, the basic fact of existence unadorned by narrative. And the mind, trained to find problems and solve them, looks at this bare existence and says, this can't be it. There must be more. We must be missing something. So it creates noise, internal noise. It replays conversations. It rehearses futures that will never come. It builds elaborate scenarios of disaster and rescue. It does anything to avoid the shocking simplicity of this moment, exactly as it is. The Zen master Shunryu Suzuki said, "In the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few. We are all experts now, experts in distraction, experts in complexity, experts in making our lives infinitely more difficult than they need to be. Because difficult gives us purpose. Difficult gives us identity. Difficult allows us to postpone the confrontation with what's simple. There's a reason meditation retreats begin with withdrawal. You surrender your phone, your books, your distractions. At first, it feels like relief. Finally, a break from the noise. But by day 2, the real withdrawal begins. Not from the devices, but from the identity they helped you maintain. Without the noise, who are you? Without the distraction, what are you running from? For some, the answer that emerges is grief. Old grief, unfelt, stored in the body, waiting for the noise to stop so it can finally be heard. For others, it's fear, not fear of something specific, but the baseline anxiety of existence itself, the vertigo of being conscious in an incomprehensible universe. For others still, it's rage. Rage at time wasted, at authenticity postponed, at the years spent performing a life instead of living one. But for those who sit with it long enough, something shifts. The noise reveals itself as defense. And once you see the defense, you can begin to ask, what am I defending against? Usually, the answer is intimacy with yourself. Intimacy with the parts of you that don't fit the story. Intimacy with your vulnerability, your ordinariness, your mortality. We fill our lives with noise because noise allows us to live on the surface. And the surface, while exhausting, is safer than the depths. Today, try this. Choose one activity you always pair with distraction. Maybe it's eating. Maybe it's your commute. Maybe it's the 10 minutes before sleep. Do it without the noise, no music, no podcast, no scrolling. Just you and the activity. Just you and the moment. Notice what comes up. Notice how quickly the mind says, this is boring. We should be doing something else. Notice the discomfort. Notice how strong the urge is to reach for distraction. And then notice something else. Notice that you're still here, still breathing, still alive. Without the noise, you don't disappear. You become more real. Do this once a day, not to achieve anything, not to become more mindful or more spiritual, but simply to meet yourself in the space you've been avoiding. The noise will always be there, waiting to drown out the silence. But silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is the presence of everything you've been too loud to hear. And what you'll find there isn't emptiness. It's the you that's been waiting beneath all that noise, patient and whole, wondering when you'd finally come home. What if peace isn't the end of growth? What if peace is where real growth begins? What if everything you've achieved in chaos was just preparation for what becomes possible in stillness? We've been taught that transformation requires intensity, that change demands struggle, that wisdom is earned through fire, through breaking, through the violent reformation of the self. And there's truth in that. Sometimes we need the fire. Sometimes we need to be broken open. But there's another way, a way that doesn't make for dramatic stories. A way that's so quiet, so gradual, so gentle that you almost don't notice it happening until one day you realize you've become someone new. This is the transformation that happens in peace, not the peace that comes after the battle, but the peace that replaces the need for battle entirely. Because here's what peace reveals. Most of the wars you've been fighting were with yourself. Most of the resistance you've been meeting was your own. Most of the noise was you, arguing with reality, trying to make it something other than what it is. And when you stop fighting, when you stop resisting, when you stop arguing, something miraculous happens. Life begins to flow through you instead of crashing against you. The Tao Te Ching teaches, the master does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. This sounds like a paradox to the Western mind. How can you accomplish anything without doing? But the doing the Tao speaks of is not action, it's force. It's the grinding, effortful, ego-driven doing that exhausts us. The doing that comes from the belief that we must fight reality into submission. The master's action is different. It's aligned. It's effortless. It's the tree growing toward the light, the river finding the sea. No struggle, just expression, just nature fulfilling itself. In peace, you discover this kind of action, not lazy, not passive, but responsive instead of reactive, flowing instead of forcing. The mind hates this. The mind wants to control. It wants to plan every step, anticipate every outcome, engineer every detail. And when life inevitably deviates from the plan, because life always does, the mind declares war. It resists. It fights. It suffers. But in peace, you learn to hold your plans lightly. You learn that you can have direction without rigidity. You can have intention without attachment. You can move toward something without being at war with where you are. This is not resignation. This is not giving up. This is the highest form of intelligence, the intelligence that knows when to act and when to allow, when to speak and when to listen, when to push and when to surrender. Peace teaches you that you don't have to have an opinion about everything, that not every thought requires expression, that not every feeling needs to be acted upon, that you can watch the weather of your inner world without being swept away by every storm. In chaos you react. In peace you respond. The difference is everything. Reaction is mechanical. Something happens, and you do what you've always done. You follow the pattern. You play the role. You're a puppet to your conditioning. Response is conscious. Something happens, and there's a gap of space between stimulus and action. In that gap lies your freedom. In that gap lies your choice. In that gap, you remember that you are not your patterns. You are the awareness that can choose differently. But you can only access that gap in peace. In chaos, it disappears. In noise, it's drowned out. In constant motion, there's no space for the pause that changes everything. The Sufi poets knew this. Rumi wrote, the quieter you become, the more you can hear. He wasn't talking about external sound. He was talking about the voice of wisdom that speaks in whispers, not shouts. The voice that's been there your entire life, patiently waiting for you to stop screaming long enough to hear it. This voice doesn't give you what you want. It shows you what you need. It doesn't confirm your biases. It dissolves them. It doesn't make you more certain. It makes you more awake. And awakening is uncomfortable, because awakening reveals how asleep you've been. How much of your life has been automatic? How many of your choices weren't really choices at all? Just conditioned responses dressed up as free will. But discomfort is not suffering. Discomfort is growth. And in peace, you can distinguish between the two. You can feel the discomfort of truth without manufacturing the suffering of resistance. This week, practice the pause. When something triggers you, a comment, an email, a disappointment, notice the impulse to react immediately. To defend, to explain, to fix. Instead, pause. Take 3 conscious breaths. Not to calm down, not to suppress your reaction, but to create space, to access the gap. In that gap, ask yourself, what response would serve my highest self? Not what would feel good, not what would win the argument, but what would align with who I want to become. Sometimes the answer is action. Sometimes it's words. But often, more often than you'd think, the answer is nothing. The answer is to let it pass, to let it be, to not take the bait. This is not weakness. This is power. The power of peace. Peace doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. It doesn't make you care less. It helps you care more effectively. And it doesn't mean nothing matters. It means everything matters too much to waste your energy on the things that don't. In peace, you become who you've always been beneath the noise. Not perfect, not finished, but finally, blessedly, authentically yourself. You've been everywhere but here. You've tried everything but this. You've become everyone but yourself. And now, finally, there's nowhere left to run. Peace has found you. The question is, will you let it in? There's a moment that comes to everyone. Maybe it comes in crisis, the loss, the illness, the betrayal that cracks you open. Maybe it comes in exhaustion, the day you realize you can't keep running at this pace. Maybe it comes in a random Tuesday afternoon when nothing special is happening, and yet everything suddenly feels different. It's the moment when you realize that all the places you've been looking for yourself, in achievements, in relationships, in possessions, in status, you were never there, you were always here. Right here. In this breath, in this body, in this irreplaceable, unrepeatable moment of existence. And the revelation is both devastating and liberating. Devastating because it means all that searching was in the wrong direction. Liberating because it means you can stop searching. You are already home. You've always been home. You just kept leaving to go look for home somewhere else. This is what peace offers. Not a destination to reach, but a recognition of where you've always been. Not something to achieve, but something to remember. Not a state to enter, but a reality to acknowledge. The prodigal son returns not because he becomes worthy, but because he remembers where he belongs. He returns not as a success, but as a failure. Not adorned, but humbled. And the father runs to meet him not because he's impressed, but because he never stopped seeing his son's true nature beneath all the costumes. You are the prodigal son, and peace is the father running toward you, seeing you as you truly are, not as what you've accomplished or failed to accomplish, but as the consciousness that has been witnessing every step of your journey. The journey away from yourself was necessary. You needed to get lost to understand the nature of lostness. You needed to exhaust yourself to understand the futility of exhaustion. You needed to chase to understand the absurdity of the chase. But now you're here, reading this, feeling something shift, recognizing, perhaps, that you're tired. Not just physically tired, soul tired, tired of pretending, tired of performing, tired of being at war with what is. And in that tiredness is grace. Because it's only when the seeker gives up that the finding happens. It's only when you stop looking that you see what's been here all along. The Zen Buddhists have a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Nothing changes. Everything changes. The wood is the same. The water is the same. But the one chopping and carrying is no longer the one who thought they needed to become someone else to be complete. Peace doesn't transport you to a different life. It transforms your relationship with the life you have. The job is still the job. The family is still the family. The challenges are still the challenges. But you meet them from a different place. Not from lack, but from sufficiency. Not from fear, but from trust. Not from separation, but from belonging. This belonging is not to a place or a person. It's a belonging to existence itself. A remembering that you're not an isolated fragment fighting for survival in an indifferent universe, but an expression of the universe experiencing itself. You're not in life. You are life. The wave is not separate from the ocean. It never was. And when you know this not intellectually, but in your bones, the fear dissolves. Not because nothing bad will happen. Bad things will still happen. Loss will come. Pain will visit. But you'll know something the fear doesn't know. You'll know that you're held. That beneath the changing surface of your life, there's a depth that's untouched by circumstance. That who you are is not what happens to you. That peace is not the absence of storms, but the presence of something the storms cannot touch. The mystics of every tradition have tried to describe this. They've used poetry, metaphor, song, silence. Because what they're pointing to can't be captured in words. It can only be tasted, can only be known directly, can only be lived. And you don't need to become a mystic to taste it. You don't need to retreat to a cave or renounce the world. You need only to stop fleeing the present moment, to stop postponing your life until conditions are perfect, to stop waiting to be someone else before you allow yourself to be here. Right now, as you read this, feel your breath. Don't change it. Just feel it. Notice the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the air at your nostrils. Notice that breathing is happening without your management. This breath is peace. This body is peace. This moment exactly as it is, with all its imperfections and uncertainties, is peace. You don't need to go find it. You need to stop fleeing it. So practice this. When you notice yourself reaching for distraction, pause. When you notice yourself lost in worry, return. When you notice yourself resisting the moment, soften. And whisper to yourself, as many times as you need to, I am home. I am here. This is enough. Not as an affirmation, not as a technique, but as a recognition of what's true. Peace will always scare the mind. The mind will always find reasons to resist, to distract, to flee. That's okay. Let it do its thing. You don't need to silence the mind. You need only to stop believing that you are the mind. You are the awareness watching the mind. You are the stillness beneath the noise. You are the space in which all experience arises and passes. And that space has never been disturbed by a single thing that's happened in it. Welcome home. You've been here all along. We've just been waiting for you to notice. And now that you have, everything and nothing has changed. The peace that scared you is the peace that saves you. Let it in.